And it's my honor to serve alongside of Heather in ministry. Lord God, Father in heaven, I so thank you for the giftedness that you have placed upon Heather. You have chosen her, Lord God. You have made her royal. You have made her holy. You have set her apart to speak, Lord God, your truth. May her words be your words. May our ears be receptive. May the enemy be silenced in the face of your Son, Jesus Christ. And may we all celebrate the glory of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, in case you hadn't heard, the church is dying. Thing is, it's not news. The church is always dying because the church is made up of mortals. We live, we die, and even though we go on to live in Christ eternally, that does not replace the seat we left empty on Sunday morning. This is why, from the beginning, from when Jesus first sent out the 70 plus disciples all the way until now, his plan for his church, his people, for us, for you and me, is that we live our lives proclaiming and sharing and coming alongside those, whether through will or circumstance, remain outside his love. This is how the church has been made new year after year and century after century. This is how we recognize, through this church made new, that Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. That's our evidence of that. And this calling and gathering and making new people his church, this is going to go on no matter what. Our only question today is, will the LCMS still be a part of it? We have several strikes against us. For one, we live in a world where we don't get to just sit here in church and trust that some nice new families, preferably already Lutheran families, will show up. Those days are long gone. Therefore, the future Lutheran Church, if there is one, will not be made up primarily of native sons and daughters of the LCMS. Either we accept that and embrace that, or it's game over. Okay? And since we only actually account for 2% of American Christianity, we are not too big to fail. Not even close. The German Lutheran culture, this is our biggest obstacle, is that ethnic heritage. The German Lutheran culture is, let's face it, very insular and very conservative. Most Lutherans don't like change, and they aren't particularly keen on outsiders. They feel most at home when they're surrounded by other lifelong Lutherans, which means this whole new world survival plan is going to be painful, if not impossible, for many. But you know what? I'm actually pretty optimistic, because we worship a God who brings life where there is no life, a God of resurrection and hope and joy, and because you're all here on Saturday when you could be doing something else, and you are here learning to be more missional, and because as I start to travel around, I get to talk to a lot of people, including a lot of pastors. And lately, they're asking me a lot to read from this book, which I wrote 22 years ago. And they're not just asking me to share this story because it's a great story, which it is, or because it's my conversion memoir, or because it shines a light and recognizes the beauty of the ministry of the Lutheran church and school system. It does do that, and that's awesome. But they're starting to ask me because people are recognizing that they can no longer hear the voice of the outsider. They become tone deaf. That people who've been raised in the Lutheran church their whole lives need to start studying the words of people like me. Look how strange I am. People like me, like they're foreigners. so that they can understand now how to connect and relate. And it's that willingness to learn and to grow and to step out of our comfort zones to better understand the other, to be willing even to put the needs of the other before our own. This is where our new life begins. And this is where my story began. I was baptized in the summer of 1961 at the gilded font of an Episcopal church as grand and well-dressed as a movie set. In the early years, my grandparents would take my brother and me to Sunday school there, while my mom and dad, unbeknownst to me, were cocooning over mimosas at the Bel Air Hotel. I'm not sure whose interests were being served by this arrangement, since my parents ended up with a nice amicable divorce by the time I was 7, and I walked away without a single lasting impression. Not a Bible story or a scripture passage or a heartfelt belief radiating from a devout teacher. Nothing. My praise was saved for the subsequent brunch, where I would give thanks for the honeydew and the raspberries, the custard oozing eclairs, the steaming stainless troughs of bacon and sausage, and the perfectly brown triangles of warm French toast. As I neared adolescence, I was enrolled for the confirmation classes. I attended the first one, skipped the next 8, and popped back in on the very last day, asking to take the entire course load of makeup exams and the final. The instructor walked me down a long corridor to a private room. "Take your time, dear, take your time," he said telegraphically, then closed the door and left me alone with a stack of Bibles and 14 pages of fill-in-the-passage questions. It was no great stretch from there to here. If religion was meant to be taken seriously, they would have declined to confirm me. They would have stood their ground and said, "We look forward to having you join us for the complete 10-session course next semester." So what does this tell us about the kinds of people God wants to gather into his new church? Well, 1, cheaters. He wants cheaters in his new church. 2, people whose parents did not take them to church. He wants them, apparently. And 3, people who, even if they had a taste of church as children, found it to be a very superficial experience and have rejected it as adults. But let's look more closely. When I reflect on the fact that I knew if religion was meant to be taken seriously, they would have declined to confirm me, I am revealing a deep longing that the Christian religion, the faith, would have proven itself worthy of being taken seriously. That would have shown itself to be the great and all-powerful mystery of the universe. And that I would have actually got to see and know the God who made heaven and earth and loved me beyond measure and wanted me to be a part of his daily life. Despite all my bluster, I was a child, far from home, and needed the church to help me find my way back. How many people within a mile of your church are secretly longing for the very same thing? Hundreds? Thousands? And no doubt a few of them front and center in each of your daily lives. Sure, they may act like they don't believe a word of it, and they think people in the church are a bunch of hypocrites. Go ahead, just take that hit. But beneath all that is the universal cry of the human heart for that one great love. And whether they want to believe it or not, it has no other name than Jesus. So how do you know who they are? These people who are hungry beneath the facade of disinterest or even contempt. And where do you get the courage to approach them, to accept a relationship on their terms, and to wait for God's timing in sharing a good word. Well, in my experience, it's not possible without being in an ongoing dialogue with the living God through prayer. This is not something that I imagined or knew anything about when I first reached out in earnest on a dark night 22 years ago. My daughter had a seizure. It was now, I think, day 5 of being in the hospital, where every day they came up with new and scarier possibilities, and they still weren't any closer to answers. So alone in the room that night, I prayed. Now, God, as a rule, is spelled with a capital G, but not by me. Not when it's coupled with damn it, which by the time I could drive was the only way I used it. As an adult, if pressed, I would describe God as something along the lines of ultimate goodness, loving and light. But it wasn't attached to any him, nor did it have any sons. I distrusted religion, both organized and otherwise. I owned up to no relationship with any higher power. I did not pray or kneel or turn things over to him. Yet despite all this, I knew. Deep in the heart of wherever these certainties lie, I knew God was the truth. I knew it, yet I neither sought it out nor embraced it. No, any possibility of that had been destroyed by the rabid demagogues who called themselves Christian. As I stood over Rebbe's crib at midnight, I couldn't say, nor did I much care, what other people believed or how they behaved. I just knew that there was nowhere else to go with pain and doubt this deep. So I clasped my hands and bowed my head and asked God to keep my beautiful daughter safe and cool through the night, to keep me coping and Lon strong and Graham resilient. And I hoped against hope that my tenuous little lowercase g would somehow be enough. I always come prepared. Guess what? It was. My tenuous little lowercase g was more than enough. And every day since then, I have dedicated myself to understanding more about who God is and who He has made me to be, by spending time in His Word, with His people, in worship, and in both corporate and especially contemplative prayer. Now, Lutherans are pretty prayerful people, but as I observe our little tribe, what I've come to see is that most are really good at talking prayers, haven't really been introduced too much to the listening prayers. We tend to be suspicious of silence, and we reject anything that feels too spiritual. But for me, the great fruit of prayer is born of the knowledge that God doesn't just speak through His Word, but through the ripple of silence after His Word. It's the silence that convicts and illuminates and gives us the strength to look at the truth, even when the truth is hard. I can imagine that it's very hard for people who spent their life in the church to accept the fact that one of the greatest deterrents to the faith is the behavior of Christians. But unfortunately, what many people see today, just as I had seen and felt 20 years ago, is a lot of behavior that feels more like clubbiness and self-righteousness and an increasingly loud and off-putting alliance between evangelical Christianity, politics, and culture wars. This is not the way it's supposed to be, because Jesus does not make all things new through legislation, or coercion, or even righteous anger. He makes all things new by making us new, by healing and reforming our hearts so that we can resist the lure of us and them thinking, so that we can walk through our days with the aroma of Christ and not the stench of division, so that we can be instruments of His peace in a noisy and seemingly chaotic world. This is the peace He came to give us all. And I am forever grateful that I was able to receive it. For me, the moment of conversion was clear. It was the sweep of breath and air and spirit in which I said to God, after putting up a really good fight, "You win. You win." And this is what happened a few days later. On Sunday morning, I went to church alone. Shortly after Pastor Ken had greeted the congregation, he invited us to reach out to a neighbor to exchange the peace of the Lord. Peace of the Lord. Peace. Oh my gosh. I had never understood what it meant, so I had never said it. Always turning and offering a safe, friendly good morning. A plump, gray-haired woman who attended every Sunday with her large, close-knit family tapped me on the shoulder. "Peace of the Lord," she said. "Yes, peace of the Lord," I echoed. She stopped and with a gentle double take, broke deeply into my watery eyes. "You got it, didn't you?" Her intuition was stunning. "Yes." We sat down. I looked up at the cross, wondering if it would strike me differently somehow. I listened to the Bible reading, thinking that possibly the seas would part and the text would now reverberate with great clarity, but I still found the words cumbersome and foreign. The big kids choir was scheduled to sing, and on that day they sang in pure, poignant, two-part harmony, "Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life." I didn't know that the lyrics were taken from the 23rd Psalm. I just knew that they were the most beautiful and relevant words I had ever heard. Is that what this is all about? This gift of peace, this calm, this freedom from fear, freedom from fearing death, Remy's death, my death, Graham's death, Lon's death, any death, not because they will not come, but because they do not need to be feared. My life had become overrun with fear, but now it had been lifted from me, and I felt a greater sense of peace than I had ever known. This is God. This is His presence. It had nothing to do with rules. It was not based on memorizing Bible passages or denying the rights of this group or that. It had no petitions to sign or pleasures to revoke. It had no conditions. It knew me well. All parts of me. Every flaw, every hurt, every conflict, every good intention. It was not a group activity. It was a gift from God to me, to free me. To make my life joyously livable, untrammeled by the mortal snags and chains, the petty thoughts, the resentments, the corrosive anger, and to reconcile my beleaguered soul. I've never felt anything so deeply, or with such certainty, in my entire life. This peace that passes all human understanding is the church's gift to the world. But the only way it gets to them is through us, through God's people. The priesthood of all believers, awake and alive. Are we awake and alive?
Yes.
Are we letting Him turn us daily from this to this? Do you know what that is? This here is Luther's understanding turned in on himself. And that's what every single one of us wants to do every day. We want to have our way, we want to have our goodie, we want to have our preference, we want to be comfortable, we're like this. And Jesus is saying, I am calling you to live like this. It's a very vulnerable feeling, isn't it? Like this. Arms wide open to the world. Did you know that this is the Hebrew root for the word salvation? Yasa, which means to make wide. Are we living wide open lives? Are we willing to reach out to the other, to the new, to the strange? Here's a good way to go. The next time you're sitting in a church budget meeting and someone suggests cutting the funds to the beloved ministry you started to free up money for some new thing some new person wants to do, watch and see if the little voice inside you goes like this, or like, oh, no, here, go have my line item. Or if you're lucky enough to have some kind of relationship with a person who will invite you to something just totally out of your wheelhouse, something you'd never want to do in a million years. How do you respond? Do you consider that first maybe God's trying to teach you how it feels to other people when you invite them to church? Or that maybe He's trying to do something new in and through this friendship that might just require you to go listen to a metal band at 11 p.m. on a weeknight. Or a lecture on global warming. Or a vegan cooking class that takes place at the same time as your LWML meeting. What are you going to say? Oh no, I can't. Or are you going to go, yeah, that sounds great. Should I pick you up? I didn't say it was going to be easy or that it was going to come naturally. That's where the prayer part comes in. You have to say, Jesus, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Help me to be able to do this because it's hard. And He will. And He will. Okay? How we spend our time reveals a lot about our hearts and our priorities. If you're spending 3 nights a week at church, it's time to drop something. Just leave that night open and then pray for Jesus to show you how to use it. And then listen in the silence for Him to answer. Keep watch as you move through your days for that new thing He's going to draw you into. And if you're a church that loves planning lots and lots of stuff for your members, stop. Encourage them instead to live out their vocations in the world and then lift up those stories in the church so people can see what it looks like. There's a great saying I love from a Japanese poet and warrior. Barns burn down. Now I can see the moon. Are we willing to burn down our barns? Our stubborn attachments to walls and programs and the way things have always been, so that the light of the world can shine anew in our lives and in our communities? I hope so. Because we are the stewards of the peace that passes all human understanding. We are the bridges from the old to the new. Ours are the hands that have held the saints that came before and will touch the lives of the saints who will come after. And all the while, God is looking down, and He is inviting His children to come and play in the fields of the Lord, where He can work in, with, and through us to do what He's been doing for 2,000 years, to make a new people, His church. Amen.
Amen. So you're going to stay for just a minute. We're running a little bit late, but I haven't got any messages yet, but I wanted to point out something. I read this book in Ethiopia. It's a great thing to read when I couldn't sleep, and I was out of time. And I read it, I had skimmed it before I read it completely. And one of the things that I was touched by is the ongoing messengers that God sent. And just wonder whether you would talk about that encouragement for those of us who are out here thinking about the things that we share, the attention that we give that seems to be rejected. That's helping us to see ourselves as one of those messengers.
Well, I think it's helpful if we can get past the very human desire to have our little contribution, whatever it is, affirmed. Like we think we're going to give it to someone and we want them to say, "Oh, you're awesome. Thank you for telling me that. Now I see everything clearly." They're not going to say that, but you know it because you did it. You planted a seed for God. You didn't, and He's going to do what He's going to do with it. And I think it's so true. And I think we are having an impact on people who rarely understand what it is, at least not for a very long time. And they almost never come back to us and tell us what it was, or they did. It'll be after a very long time. I mean, it's bizarre to me that I am now going back. I mean, I've read this book a lot to people 22 years ago when it came out, but to have it now have relevance in a new way, that's the long view. That's God's game, right? And again, it's people all throughout, whether it's like there was this janitor that used to come in the hospital in the morning when you're just stuck and you're just never sleeping and you're sleeping on the floor and your kid's sick and, people who've lived through these kinds of things. And he would come in all happy and cheerful and whistling. He's like, "Hey, I'll play with her. You go get some coffee." And you just thought, "Oh, I just love you. I don't know who you are, but you're just awesome." And things like that. And for me, pivotally, having the surgeon who would end up performing her brain surgery that would save her life, asked me to pray for him. You gonna say no to that? I don't think so.
So one other thing, this came in earlier, was an individual who is in a small group of 12. And home Bible study, I'm assuming, and they said, basically asked, "Can you give us just an idea of a starting point about how we might get beyond and outside of the group?" Just a suggestion of a starting point. I know it's asking you to do something right off the top of your head, but I think you touched on something. I'm going to start to say it. You said, I don't know any other way to approach this other than to come before Almighty God regularly and consistently in an ongoing way in prayer.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be true individually. I mean, I can just say that's become my start of every day. I'm in my prayer chair and the word is out and I'm reading, and whether I'm exploring a different prayer method at a given time or what have you, that's always it. And there's always lots and lots of silence and waiting and listening, and that always reform you. And you can do that certainly as a group. When I have groups in my house, we'll always do maybe a little Taizé chant and then really hear the word and then sit. There may be silence for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then maybe someone will offer something. And I think that's how a group is going to become stronger. In terms of activities, like what we do as a group to be more mission, that gets harder. It should be organic to who you are and what God reveals to you in prayer. And I'm really confident that if you're meeting and all of you have that same goal, and the thing that is drawing you together probably already has an essence to it, more than just the essence of Jesus, but some other commonality. I think if you really committed yourself to a period of discernment through prayer and silence, then He would make it very clear a thing, a way.
All in 15 minutes, right?
What?
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much. You are a blessing to us, and last year I'm touched by what you talked about with prayer and silence, thinking to last year's presenter, Chris Pavla, and him picking up on the Psalms, the Selah.
Yeah.
The stop.
Yeah.
The stop. And so, and the wait. So that's something that is an encouragement, and you've kind of picked up on it in a different way. Thank you so much. And you got your breakout session